15 years ago, on a dark and fateful night, the Witch of Silence appeared following the queen's death. With malevolent intent, she cursed the king and his only son, Oscar. Her curse was cruel. They would never sire an heir, and their blood would poison any womb it touched, dooming the royal bloodline to end with Oscar. Since that night, the young prince has spent 15 years scouring the land for a cure. Desperation drives him to new lengths, and one day, he sneaks out of the castle with his loyal attendant, Lazar, to seek the Witch of the Azure Moon. This witch, he believes, might be the key to lifting the curse. Lazar, however, is skeptical. He fears that this witch might place an even more devastating curse upon them instead of helping. But Oscar, out of options and patience, is willing to take the risk. If the Azure Moon Witch fails, he resolves to hunt down the Witch of Silence herself and force her to undo what she has done. Their journey takes them across a rocky desert until the towering silhouette of the Azure Tower rises in the distance. Upon reaching the base of the tower, they tether their mounts and approach the entrance. Lazar, nervous, pleads with Oscar to reconsider. No one has reached the top of the tower in decades, and many challengers have perished trying. But Oscar, confident in his determination, dismisses his attendant's fears and boldly opens the door. Inside, the entrance looks exactly as described in ancient records. If those records are accurate, then the tower's climb will be fraught with trials, and only those who overcome them all will reach the top to have their wish granted by the witch. Undeterred, Oscar begins the ascent, instructing Lazar to wait at the bottom where it's safer. Predictably, Lazar refuses to leave his prince's side and reluctantly follows. The first challenge greets them in a dim chamber, a stone slab inscribed with a mathematical theorem from a century ago and a floor swarming with snakes. Fortunately for Oscar, the theorem was solved 10 years prior. Applying the known answer, he clears the challenge, causing the snakes to vanish harmlessly. They are then whisked to the next level via a magic circle. At the top of the tower, Tanasha, the Witch of the Azure Moon, learns from her familiar, Lola, that challengers have entered her domain. Surprised, she muses on how long it's been since anyone even attempted the climb. While uninterested in watching their progress, she reminds Lola to prepare for their inevitable failure. She doubts they'll survive the first guardian beast. However, Oscar proves her wrong. After dispatching the first beast with unnerving ease, he brushes it off as a warm-up, unnerving Lazar. As they press onward, the prince reveals that the last successful climber was his great-grandfather, who completed the ascent 70 years ago. Of the 10 who attempted the climb back then, only one made it to the top. In the next chamber, 2 gargoyle statues spring to life. With skill and precision, Oscar defeats the first, while Lazar looks on in terror. Meanwhile, Lola reports back to Tanasha, who begins preparing tea but questions whether it's worth the effort. When Lola predicts the challenger's success, Tanasha grows more intrigued but maintains her skepticism. Oscar swiftly eliminates the second gargoyle, but not without warning Lazar that a single hit from the creatures would have been fatal. As they proceed, the ground beneath them quakes. Suddenly, the floor crumbles, separating the prince from his attendant. As Lazar clings to unstable footing, he urges Oscar to continue, vowing to await the day he becomes king before falling into the abyss. Grief-stricken but resolute, Oscar presses on alone, eventually reaching the tower's summit. The final door opens to reveal a breathtaking penthouse view. His awe is interrupted by Tanasha's voice welcoming him. The witch floats gracefully into view, offering him a seat and tea. She introduces herself, commenting on how few still address her by her given name. The prince, surprised by her youthful appearance, awkwardly asks if she's used magic to maintain it. Tanasha explains that witches live far longer than humans, and her body has simply stopped aging. She assures him that Lazar is unharmed and resting safely at the tower's base, easing some of Oscar's tension. When asked about his lineage, Oscar introduces himself and mentions his great-grandfather, Regius, who Tanasha fondly remembers. She notes the family resemblance, but teases that Oscar looks sterner than the kind-faced Regius. The prince retorts with humor, earning a rare chuckle from the witch. Curious about her challengers, Oscar asks what becomes of those who fail the ascent. Offended by his suggestion of mass graves, Tanasha clarifies that no one dies in her tower. Before any fatal harm befalls them, she sends failed challengers to the ground floor, slightly altering their memories before scattering them across the land. Genuine seekers, however, often receive her aid, a fact she'd prefer to keep secret until Lola spilled it. Finally, Oscar reveals the reason for his visit: the curse inflicted upon his family. Tanasha listens intently as he recounts the story, but warns that curses are notoriously difficult to break. Unlike structured magic, curses are erratic, born from words imbued with power. Often, they can't be undone without a clue left by the caster. Examining Oscar's curse, Tanasha discovers it's not a curse at all, but a twisted blessing. Designed to shield an unborn child with extraordinary power, the blessing inadvertently prevents normal women from bearing it. Layers of intertwined magic complicate the problem, making a solution nearly impossible. While Tanasha can't break the spell, she offers to search for someone who might withstand the blessing's force. Using a magic bowl, she seeks a woman with the necessary magical resilience. She warns Oscar that this person might not meet his expectations. They could be married, elderly, or even a child. Undeterred, Oscar abruptly suggests Tanasha herself. Flustered, the witch refuses, citing her age, royal politics, and her disinterest in marriage. Oscar, however, is persistent, pointing out that she embodies all the qualities required. Their argument intensifies until Tanasha reluctantly agrees to accompany him back to the castle, but only for a year and only as his protector. When they descend the tower, Lazar awakens, astonished to see his prince unscathed and accompanied by Tanasha. Oscar introduces her as a pupil of the witch who will help cure the curse. As they journey home, Tanasha lights their path with magic, but Oscar only asks that she stay by his side. Though she agrees to assist him, she makes it clear that her stay in the castle will be temporary. Oscar and Tanasha eventually return to the castle, where the witch wastes no time getting to work. She casts a spell on the prince, granting him immunity from all external physical and magical attacks as long as she lives. The spell, she explains, is unbreakable by any human. Oscar, marveling at this newfound protection, jokes that life now feels like he's playing in cheat mode. Tanasha quickly tempers his enthusiasm, warning him that the spell won't shield him from poisons or psychological manipulation, so he must remain vigilant. Despite her warnings, Oscar brings up marriage again, which she rejects once more. Later, Tanasha helps Lazar organize some books, and their conversation turns to the issue of succession. Lazar confides that even Oscar's cousins from the Branch family disappeared mysteriously 15 years ago, leaving no leads behind. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the castle, Sylvia is attempting to light the chandeliers when one comes loose and falls. Without missing a step, Tanasha, who happens to be passing by, halts its descent with a casual wave of her hand. No incantation needed. Sylvia and her colleague are left speechless, already abuzz with rumors that this enigmatic witch was brought back from the infamous Azure Tower by the prince himself. A sudden commotion outside catches Tanasha's attention. Joining Lazar at a nearby window, she sees General Al and Meriden engaged in an intense sparring match, their enthusiastic subordinates cheering them on. Al ultimately disarms Meriden, claiming victory, and Tanasha can't help but admire his skill. Lazar, ever loyal to his prince, quickly adds that while Al is the most talented of the generals, Oscar is still stronger. Tanasha smirks at his obvious admiration for the prince and admits she isn't surprised, given Oscar's triumph over her tower's trials. Watching the duel ignites her own interest in sparring, something she hasn't done in a long time. Lazar is startled by her request, but helps her prepare for a match with Al. The crowd gathers again, buzzing with curiosity as Tanasha, dressed in suitable attire, steps onto the training field. The onlookers gasp as she effortlessly parries and counters Al's attacks, demonstrating swordsmanship far too refined for a mere mage. Breathless, Al suggests she join the knights, remarking that her talent is wasted elsewhere. Not everyone is impressed, however. Meriden watches from the sidelines, bristling with jealousy at the attention Tanasha receives. Her frustration boils over when Al casually mentions that envy doesn't suit her, earning him a sharp tug on his cheeks. Shortly after, Tanasha's familiar, Lola, appears with new information. The witch heads straight to Oscar's office, where her travel-ready attire catches him off guard. She announces her intention to leave the castle for a few days, and though Oscar protests, she asserts her freedom to come and go as she pleases. When pressed for details, she reveals her destination, the magical lake in Druza. Lazar pales at the mention of Druza, warning that the area is dangerous. It's the site where the demonic beast was sealed 70 years ago. Tanasha acknowledges the danger, explaining that unusual surges of magical energy have been emanating from the lake, and she intends to investigate. Oscar insists on accompanying her, arguing that Druza falls under their jurisdiction and that the state wouldn't look kindly on a witch acting alone. To make it official, he proposes assembling a unit to join her. Tanasha reluctantly agrees but reminds him that her duty is solely to protect him, not anyone else. She gives him 1 hour to prepare. Meanwhile, at the magical lake, two mages, Vault and Morales, discuss their expectation that Tanasha will soon arrive. They share a mutual interest in the strange activity at the lake, hinting at a shared goal. Back at the castle, Oscar gathers his team: General Al, Meriden, Sylvia, and a few other soldiers. Sylvia's eyes light up when she sees Tanasha's dragon familiar, Nark, for the first time. She eagerly approaches to pet the creature, but it startles her with a massive yawn. Tanasha warns her to be cautious, as Nark isn't accustomed to strangers. As they prepare to depart, Oscar briefs the group on their mission to survey the magical lake and emphasizes the importance of following Tanasha's orders. His words surprise the soldiers, who exchange glances of quiet unease at the idea of taking commands from a witch. The group teleports to Unnamed Fortress, just outside the lake, and proceeds on foot. Along the way, they learn the history of the area. 70 years ago, the neighboring nation of Druza invaded Farsa. Though the Farsan army repelled the invaders, the Druzan forces unleashed a demonic beast they couldn't fully control. The creature ravaged both armies and the land until the Azure which sealed it away. However, the beast's toxic miasma poisoned the earth, creating the barren wasteland they now walk through. When they reach the lake, Tanasha abruptly halts and calls out to an unseen presence. A mage emerges from the miasma, startled to see her. Recognizing him as one of the mages who controlled the beast during the war, she readies herself, but he attacks first, casting a spell that injures several soldiers. Oscar activates his protective spell to shield Meriden, while Tanasha counters the mage's illusionary attack. She concludes that Druza is attempting to revive the beast, escalating the danger of the situation. After tending to the wounded, Tanasha confesses to the group that she is, in fact, the Azure Witch. Their reactions are mixed, but Sylvia steps forward to assure her of their trust. Tanasha brushes off the gesture, reminding them that witches inspire fear, not camaraderie. Oscar suggests they retreat to gather reinforcements, but Tanasha insists on pursuing the mage immediately. She believes the Druzan forces will hasten their plans now that they've been discovered. Though Oscar wants to accompany her, she reassures him that she won't die or abandon their contract. Mounting her dragon, Nark, she flies ahead to the heart of the lake. There, she confronts the mages and decisively eliminates them. Breaking the seal on the demonic beast herself, she chooses to end its threat once and for all. The beast emerges, and an intense battle ensues. Displaying unmatched agility, swordsmanship, and spellcasting, Tanasha fights fiercely, eventually defeating the creature. However, in its final moments, the beast launches a desperate attack that leaves her gravely injured. Nark carries her back to the fortress, where Oscar anxiously waits. Sylvia later informs him that Tanasha's condition has stabilized. When Oscar visits her, he is startled to find her appearance altered. She has aged slightly. Tanasha explains that she accelerated her body's growth to heal her internal injuries. Despite her weakened state, she assures Oscar that the beast is no longer a threat. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the prince thanks her for saving them all.